On November 22, 2020, 26-year-old Instagram influencer Alexis Sharkey posted a photo from Tulum, Mexico. She was smiling and she asked her followers for restaurant recommendations. It was the kind of post her 20,000 followers had come to expect from her. 5 days later, she was found dead. On the morning of November 28th, a city worker driving along Red Haw Lane in Houston spotted feet sticking out of the brush on the side of the road. Alexis was dumped on a roadside 17 miles from downtown, 3 miles from the apartment she shared with her husband. There were no obvious signs of trauma visible at the scene, and nothing that immediately explained what had happened to her. Alexis had built her platform around wellness content, fitness, and selling organic beauty products. Her Instagram was her brand and her public identity, and to her followers, her life looked like one long sunlit adventure. However, the friends who actually knew her told a completely different story. She had married Thomas Sharkey in December 2019, and he was more than 20 years older than her. The couple moved to Houston in January 2020, and within months, the marriage had become something her friends described as terrifying. Alexis confided in them about physical and emotional abuse. Friends who traveled with her to Marfa, Texas, just weeks before her death said she was visibly afraid and she was planning to leave him. The divorce hadn't been filed yet, but those closest to her knew it was coming. In domestic violence cases, the period when a victim begins to leave is consistently the most dangerous. For Alexis, that was exactly where she was. For nearly 2 months after her body was found, the cause of death remained unconfirmed while speculation ran in every direction. Then on January 19, 2021, the Harris County Medical Examiner confirmed it, that Alexis had been strangled to death. The autopsy results shifted the focus of the investigation sharply toward Tom Sharkey. His behavior in the aftermath of her death had already been raising questions. He gave media interviews describing their marriage as happy and himself as devastated. He also posted publicly about how lost he was without her. But privately, Houston police would later confirm that as the investigation progressed, Tom became untruthful and evasive. He left Texas within weeks of her death, and he refused to claim her body from the medical examiner's office, leaving it in the morgue for 2 weeks while Stacy fought to gain next of kin status. When Stacy finally reached him, she said the conversations were not expressions of grief, they were blame. Every conversation, she recalled, was about how horrible Alexis had been and how wonderful he was. He also refused to return her belongings. Her family asked for her belongings, and he kept promising to send everything, but he never did. Before leaving Texas, he had friends clear out the apartment entirely, and by the time Stacy's family tried to retrieve anything, it was all gone. In August 2021, Tom agreed to meet with detectives to provide a DNA sample, but when the detective arrived at the agreed location, Tom had vanished. He offered what police described as a bizarre explanation, and shortly after relocated to Florida. On September 29, 2021, Houston police obtained an arrest warrant for Tom Sharkey for the murder of his wife. The warrant was issued quietly, without a public announcement, because investigators described him as volatile. A fugitive task force tracked him to Fort Myers, Florida, where he was staying with his daughter. On the evening of October 5th, U.S. Marshals knocked on the door. His daughter and her boyfriend came outside and Tom ran upstairs. A gunshot followed and he was dead before they could place him under arrest. At the press conference the following day, the lead investigator stated plainly that Tom was the only person who had the means, motive, and the opportunity to commit the crime. There would be no trial and no formal conviction. Stacy Robineau, who had suspected Tom from the very beginning, said she had always expected the case to end in a courtroom, a chance for a jury to formally say what the evidence showed, and his death took that from her. On the night of November 23, 2025, 31-year-old Austrian influencer and makeup artist Stephanie Pieper attended a Christmas party in Graz, took a taxi home with a friend, and sent a WhatsApp message confirming she had arrived safely. Then she took her dog Marlowe for a walk and sent one more message, this time telling her friend she thought someone was in the stairwell of her building. Neighbors later told police they heard arguing from her apartment area that night and saw her ex-boyfriend in the building. Those sounds were the last anyone heard of her. When she failed to show up for a scheduled photo shoot the following day, colleagues tried to reach her but her phone was off. Family and co-workers reported her missing to the Styrian State Police, who checked her apartment and found the dog there alone. Stephanie had built her career around beauty and lifestyle content in Graz, Austria. She had over 47,000 followers on Instagram, and she was brand ambassador for a cosmetics label. Her last post, shared on November 9th, was a video of herself getting a pedicure. Her ex-boyfriend, a 31-year-old Slovenian man named Patrick living in Graz, immediately became the focus of the investigation. According to reporting that emerged during the investigation, the conflict appears to have been connected to the breakdown of their relationship. A neighbor reported that Stephanie had wanted to separate from him, but that he did not want to accept the breakup. The couple had reportedly been in an on-and-off relationship and had separated previously before getting back together. Other reports describe the fatal confrontation as an argument linked to jealousy and the end of the relationship. The precise motive, however, has not been definitively established by prosecutors. Police established that he had made several trips between Austria and Slovenia in the days surrounding her disappearance and had become unreachable. On the evening of November 24th, Slovenian police were called to a casino parking lot near the border. A car was on fire and it belonged to Patrick. Officers found him nearby and arrested him. Two male relatives, his brother and stepfather, were also arrested in Austria on suspicion of involvement. Both were later released after what came next. On November 28th, back in Graz, under questioning, the ex-boyfriend confessed. He then gave police directions. Slovenian authorities searched a forested area near Mašperk in northern Slovenia. Following the coordinates he provided, they found Stephanie's body inside a suitcase buried at the site. The autopsy confirmed she had suffered violence and that the cause of death was strangulation. However, in March 2026, the Graz Public Prosecutor's Office revealed something that made the case even more difficult to absorb. The autopsy could not definitively establish the exact moment of her death. The prosecutor told an Austrian outlet, "It is entirely possible that she was still alive when she was placed inside." The possibility that she may have been conscious when she was put into that suitcase and buried is something prosecutors have since described as central to understanding the full extent of what was done to her. As of early 2026, Patrick remains in pretrial detention in Austria awaiting trial, facing a potential life sentence. On the afternoon of May 13, 2025, 23-year-old influencer Valeria Marquez was live streaming from her beauty salon in Zapopan, Mexico, when two men showed up claiming to have an expensive gift for her. One of them was wearing a mask, and they said they were delivery drivers. They asked for her by name, then left without delivering anything. She went back to her live stream, visibly unsettled, and told her followers what had just happened. "Maybe they were going to kill me," she said. Minutes later, the men came back. They arrived on motorcycles. One of them walked into the salon, confirmed she was Valeria, and handed her a stuffed animal and a bag of coffee. Then he drew a gun and shot her twice. The livestream was still running. An employee grabbed the phone and ended the broadcast. Valeria Marquez was born on February 14, 2002, in Guadalajara, Jalisco. She had originally studied dentistry, something she talked about returning to someday, but her path shifted in 2021 when she won a regional beauty pageant that put her in front of brand partnerships and campaigns across western Mexico. By the time she died, her Instagram had 380,000 followers, and her TikTok had over 113,000. She used both platforms the way people actually want to use social media, genuinely sharing her life, and not just polished promotional content. In 2024, she opened her own salon, Blossom the Beauty Lounge in Zapopan. She filmed there constantly, live-streamed from the floor while working, turned the space into both a business and a content studio. It was the physical version of everything she had been building. The Jalisco prosecutor's office confirmed that the shooter had arrived asking specifically for her and appeared not to know her personally. A spokesman told the Associated Press that it was obviously someone who came with a purpose. As the investigation deepened, the motive that emerged was one that made everything worse. Valeria had previously been in a relationship with a man named Francisco Alvarez. According to Mexican authorities, Francisco had threatened her on multiple occasions, and when she refused to yield to his demands, he turned to his father, Ramon Alvarez, also known as LR1, a high-ranking leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, and asked him to have her killed. Ramon was arrested on July 31, 2026, and a co-perpetrator was arrested in August 2026. The actual shooter remained at large. The U.S. Treasury Department took notice, and on June 18, 2025, just weeks after the killing, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned 5 senior CJNG members, explicitly citing Valeria's murder as an example of Mexico's femicide crisis. In the days after her death, flowers piled up outside the salon, and fans across Latin America posted tributes. Mexico's president confirmed a federal investigation was underway. Valeria's TikTok was taken down by the platform, and her Instagram froze where it was. Followers looking at photos of a woman who had been shot in her own salon while talking to them. Her tomb was vandalized after her burial. In August 2026, Blossom the Beauty Lounge was dismantled after authorities lifted the seizure order on the property, and the space she had built and filmed in and poured herself into was gutted. On the evening of August 7, 2025, a companion vehicle traveling with Stacey Theroux and Matthew Yeomans through the mountains of British Columbia's interior watched their truck leave a forestry road and plunge approximately 200 meters down a steep rock field. Search and rescue later described what the vehicle would have gone through on the way down, rolling many times before coming to rest at the bottom. Matthew was found inside, and he hadn't survived the descent. Stacey had been ejected at some point and was found some distance from the wreckage, disoriented and badly injured. She was airlifted to hospital that evening, but she didn't make it through the night. Stacey and Matthew ran a YouTube channel called Toyota World Runners, built around their shared obsession with off-roading, overlanding, and vehicle restoration. Over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, 72,000 followers on Instagram, and a blog that documented every modification and expedition in detail for the community they had cultivated over years of content. They traveled extensively through North and South America, always filming and always sharing. Their most significant project was a vehicle they called Sunday, described as the world's first Land Cruiser Chinook, a custom-built 4x4 camper they constructed by combining a Toyota Chinook body with a Land Cruiser chassis. They built it in 100 days. It was their home, their filming studio, and the most concrete expression of the life they were building together. On August 7th, the couple and a companion vehicle were navigating remote forestry roads in the Purcell Range near Trout Lake in the West Kootenay region. The terrain was rough, the altitude high, and the road far from any paved highway or cell service. At around 6:30 in the evening, their vehicle lost control and went over the edge. The fact that a companion vehicle was present made the difference in what came next. They had an accurate GPS location, which meant Caslow Search and Rescue knew exactly where to send teams and where to direct the helicopter. Without that, in terrain that remote at that altitude with daylight fading, reaching them in time would have been near impossible. It still wasn't enough to save them. Stacey's mother Colleen posted on Facebook after the news broke. She wrote, "They are together forever, as we knew they would always be." She described the mountains of British Columbia as the place they loved most and called what the family was going through unimaginable heartache. Fellow creators and overlanding enthusiasts from across the world posted tributes. It was never confirmed whether they were filming when the accident happened. Content creation was so woven into every part of their lives together that the possibility is there. But no footage from that evening has ever been made public, and the people in the companion vehicle haven't spoken about what those final moments looked like. On the evening of January 6, 2022, Rory Teasley posted what would be his final TikTok video. It was 6 seconds long, and in it, he jokingly climbs out of bed holding his back while bubble wrap sounds play, mimicking cracking bones. The caption read, "Approaching 30 be like." It was the kind of content that made his 260,000 followers feel like they were hanging out with a friend. A few hours later, he was dead. Rory was 28 years old, from Pontiac, Michigan, and his whole online identity was built around making people laugh. He called himself everybody's gay best friend on TikTok. He posted comedy skits, dance videos, and the occasional seafood mukbang with friends. Major celebrities had engaged with his content, and he had performed in Atlanta, New Orleans, and Detroit. At the time of his death, he already had flights and an Airbnb booked for Dallas the following weekend to celebrate a friend's birthday. He was, by every account from everyone who knew him, the life of the room. That evening, he and his boyfriend of 10 years, Docwen Watkins, were at their apartment in Pontiac playing Overwatch together. The two had been together since Rory was a teenager. Watkins was 31 years old, 3 years Rory's senior, and he had a prior criminal record. A misdemeanor conviction for malicious destruction of property, a charge that pointed to a history of aggression that had apparently never fully surfaced in the decade they were together. An argument started over the game, over something that happened during a match. Watkins later told police that during the argument, Rory broke his gaming headset. What followed was captured on a Ring camera inside the apartment. Watkins attacked Rory before placing him in a chokehold. He later admitted to investigators that he had learned the technique years earlier and understood that it could be fatal. That detail, that he already knew the potential consequences, made the confession especially disturbing. At approximately 11:45 that night, Watkins called 911. He told the dispatcher that he and his boyfriend had gotten into a fight and that Rory was sleeping on the couch. When Oakland County deputies arrived, Rory was slumped over on his knees with his head against the ground, unconscious and barely breathing. By the time paramedics rushed him to hospital, he could not be revived. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Watkins was taken into custody at the scene. After being read his rights, he waived them and confessed. The Ring camera footage was entered as evidence. At his preliminary hearing, a judge viewed the footage and found it clearly showed the actions that caused Rory's death. Watkins was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced in May 2023 to 15 to 99 years in prison. When the news broke online, Rory's comment sections flooded. His final video, the 6-second joke about getting old, became a memorial wall. Fans who had never met him in person mourned him the way you mourn someone you actually knew. He had let people in through his content in a way not many creators manage. The hashtag for his name trended across platforms.